In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 6 warning signs hair transplant might not be the right for you. Some of the worst hair transplant results I have ever seen where people were not the right prospects for the procedure. Now, receiving warning signs is incredibly important in life. Maybe you remember it when you visited your doctor last time and he checked your cholesterol levels and your LDL, bad cholesterol, was actually very high. This acted you as a very important warning sign that you should reevaluate your lifestyle choices, your dietary habits in order to protect yourself from further cardiovascular damage. Now, what or who is responsible for giving you the warning signs and protection in case hair transplant is not for you in nowadays hair transplant industry that is driven by advertising and online marketing? On one hand, full of great talented hair transplant surgeons, but on the other hand, full of clinics that are thirsty after your money and try to sign you up as soon as possible. What triggers the warning alarm? Is it gonna be you speaking to 20 different hair transplant clinics, interacting with your family and friends and relatives about this decision, researching hours on the internet, or reading 200 different online reviews on hair transplants? Now, as somebody who has done 3 hair transplants myself, including 1 hair transplant correction surgery, has observed close to 100 hair transplants in person, visited 25 clinics worldwide in the last 7 years, and has been consulting close to 2,000 guys one-on-one since 2018 on how to find the right clinic and supporting them throughout their decision in order to maximize their hair transplant success. This is the warning sign number 1 that hair transplant is not for you. Sign number 1, it will be somebody who is considering hair transplant, but on the other hand, he has been observing hair loss for less than a year or shorter. In such case, it may be just the shedding disorder, which is something different than permanent hair loss. On this list, you can see many triggers of such shedding disorder. This is especially the case when fallen hairs do not differ in diameter. Shedding of this nature could be oftentimes even self-reversible, so you don't need to do anything, just wait for that hair loss to recover by itself. And how much months do you need to wait? Normally about 4 to 6 months until you see some visual improvements. If this is not going to self-correct, you may need some intervention, but this will not require you to be on any lifelong anti-hair loss protocol or treatment. Now, in case you have been diagnosed with male pattern baldness caused by androgenetic alopecia, which is a long-term progressive form of hair loss, in that case your follicles are actually miniaturizing. Some of them are doing it faster, some of them slower. So if you do a pull test or if you shower your scalp and then you try to look what types of hairs you have on your hands, then you will notice differences in diameter of those hairs. In such case, you might be viable for a hair transplant, but ideally you want to get on treatments first. By that I mean finasteride and minoxidil to slow down your hair loss progression and thicken those hairs so they have all even thickness. And in such case, it can actually make you delay your consideration to have a hair transplant, which is always advisable, instead having it done at a very early age. But of course, if you have been on those treatments for at least a year or more and they didn't give you the results that you wanted, in such case it makes sense to consider hair transplant as well. The second warning sign would be somebody who is seeing hair transplant as the ultimate hair loss redemption. Somebody who is unwilling to get on any hair loss preventative treatment that would be saving his existing hair in the future and keeping it from falling out further. And don't get me wrong, I was the same when I was 25 and I got my first hair transplant. As you can see here, the front was transplanted, but then the rest kept on thinning. And after 1 to 2 years later, as you can see here, it already looked like I need a second hair transplant. That's why medication like finasteride, either oral or topical, is something that I consider personally a mandatory thing if you want to prolong your hair transplant success into the future and make it look great, because you're not only relying on your transplant to grow well and look full, natural and dense, but also on the existing hair behind it. So especially if you are in your 20s, 30s, and also 40s, and you have still plenty of hair, existing hair, that is at the risk of more thinning, I would advise to consider finasteride. Now, minoxidil 5% is also a form of preventative treatment. It's also FDA approved for hair loss. However, I don't consider it to be that essential because it doesn't have the same long-term hair keeping ability, unlike finasteride. Now, if we go back to the prospects who are interested in a hair transplant, but they are strictly averse to finasteride, and you also happen to be below 30, it's very hard that you will be even accepted by any of the best hair transplant doctors worldwide who would have otherwise has been able to deliver the best of the best results for you. Now, you may, of course, some negotiation power to you if you are above 30 and you don't have extensive hair loss yet. You have very good donor zone, very strong, thick, good density. You had no hair transplants before, and based on your family history and your own genetics, it doesn't seem like there is that much more hair loss to be coming for you. But even if this is the case, and you will be able to get a hair transplant with one of the best hair transplant doctors who will actually accept you, that hair transplant still has the chance of not being as long lasting as it could have been if you had been on finasteride for all the time as well. Now, the warning sign number 3 will be somebody who has patchy hair loss. That means alopecia areata or any form of diffuse unpatterned alopecia that oftentimes affects the donor area. That means like diffuse hair loss across the donor. Also retrograde alopecia that affects the donor from the bottom and also the sides from the bottom up. This is the donor area that is very unreliable to work on if you are a hair transplant doctor. These types of patients need to be treated first. They are usually put on minoxidil, 5% finasteride or low-level laser therapy, PRP. The more severe the alopecia, the more the combination of all of them is required. And then they will be re-evaluated, and if the situation improves and the alopecia is under control for a good amount of time, ideally at least a year after that condition developed, then you could be considered eligible for a hair transplant as well. The warning sign number 4 that you should not get a hair transplant. Your hair loss looks like this, or even worse, something like this, but you want to spend less than 4 or 5 grand total for your hair transplant. Hair transplant in this case is the worst idea ever. Why? Because the number of grafts that you will need for somewhat acceptable and presentable result will be no less than 5,000 grafts or hair follicles, all the way up to 7,000 or more. And if you look at how much your donor area can give in that case of Norwood 5, 6, or even 7, it will be a pretty complex problem to solve for under 4,000 or 5,000, don't you think? I mean, it's not that it's impossible. It can be definitely done with somebody who costs more and is more specialized on high Norwood classes restoration, but you definitely cannot find them in $4,000 price class. And I know I have clients who have very high expectations. They have high grade baldness and they want to do it as soon as possible for as little money possible. And it's sometimes very tough to explain them what they are losing if they are just limiting their budget so low. So if you are one of the guys who has extensive baldness and doesn't necessarily want to spend like 20, 30K on a hair transplant in that case, is aware that you definitely need at least 2 hair transplants in that case, definitely get on a call with me where I can help you out and share with you what worked with my clients in that exact situation in the past, because I have already consulted close to 2,000 of them and I know the best courses of action in that case, even despite your limited budget. Just make sure that you don't end up with totally wrong clinics at the bottom of the quality pyramid. The warning number 5 that hair transplant is not for you. So maybe you are the type of guy where there are many bald people in your family and you are always thinking about it, but you have never done it. In such case, you should do it right now. I really mean it. Why? Because oftentimes happens that many guys are so insecure about their hair loss that they first think they want to bring the hair back, but oftentimes they don't realize how much more complex of a thing this is, how many more decisions they will need to do instead of just shaving the head off. And maybe, I'm just saying maybe, they will also experience the same relief where they don't need to be obsessing about the thinning hair, no need to be watching themselves in the mirrors, no need to be afraid of the wind, the rain, and all these things, and they will actually become more confident, self-centered in themselves. Maybe even see it as a unique self-development type of journey that, you know, if you shave your head, it can help you, as I've seen with some individuals, move further in life and just have that confidence. Like if you watch the channels Bald Cafe, it's a cool channel for people who are into that type of thing. It can really help you and transform you without needing to make so many different decisions on like hair loss treatments, hair transplants, and all that stuff. So if this seems like you resonate with this type of thing, definitely go for it. And this is a sign that hair transplant would actually be a mistake in that case. So give it a shot, shave it off, and see how it looks. Now, before I share with you the warning sign number 6, let me introduce to you John. John is a pretty confident guy, but a very picky guy. He has been doing hair transplant research for a year and looking at different hair transplant results left and right, checking out the reviews, forums. He even got on a call with Matt from Let's Get Hair, who advised him the best hair transplant clinic choices for his quality criteria, expectations, and budget. And 2 months later, John is still the same, looking at hundreds of before and after results, thinking, that looks so fake. I cannot do it. There's no way I'm getting the same density. Guys, hair transplant is only an illusion of density, and the best doctors are the ones who can utilize the fewest numbers of follicles, implant them on a square centimeter, and achieve the fullest possible outcome that is also most natural. Now, this needs to be especially understood if you have fine hair like myself. In that case, you may even need 2 hair transplants to come on that ideal fullness of the hairline most of you guys would probably like. If you look at these 2 images, on the right, we can see a non-transplanted hairline that is natural, never suffered any long-term hair loss. And on the left, we can see a transplanted hairline that has roughly 50 to 55 follicles transplanted in the square centimeter. The hairline on the right that is natural has 80 to 120 follicles. Obviously, it's not possible to recreate the same fullness and density with a hair transplant. Why? Because even the best doctors suggest not to go more than 50 or 55 follicles transplanted on a square centimeter in a hairline to avoid lower survival rates and also things like necrosis. It's easier to dance back more after the first surgery and had a touch-up, but don't try to do it on the first surgery because even the best guys are saying, no, it's not the best way to do it. So once you understand that your hair transplant will be actually only 40 to 50% of your original density, then you become eligible for a hair transplant, and then hair transplant will not be a mistake or a big regret that you will have for the rest of your life. If you want to know if you are the right hair transplant candidate though, this is the video which talks about it. 3 signs of a great hair transplant candidate. Check it out and see you there.